This show is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find the other great shows on the network, head over to the deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
That's what Jane was talking about, Mark.
Never point your finger at me, young man.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Deluxe Edition. I am your host, Casey Shearer, and joining me, as always, Ray, the podcaster.
What's going on, Casey?
Not much, Ray. We just had another incredible interview. I was thinking about changing that because I say that as if we haven't just talked for the last 2 hours. I am acting like we're just now seeing each other for the first time. But in reality, we've talked for the last 2 hours with the wonderful Marc Singer.
Yes, an amazing man that I am so excited that I got to talk to today. Awesome.
Yeah, this was another great one, man. We've already talked to Marc 2 other times on the show. This is the first with Ray, and I think it might be a first for Marc as we went an hour and 35 minutes without mentioning the Beastmaster.
Well, at some point, if you're going to bring somebody back on, you can't just beat the Beastmaster to death, you know?
Yeah.
It's like talking to somebody who is a fishmonger. Eventually, you got to talk to them about something else, you know?
Yeah, this was a great episode. I'm friends with Marc Singer now, which fucking still blows my mind to this day. Like, I can't believe that those words come out of my mouth that I'm friends with the Beastmaster.
I like how you say that.
It's fucking crazy. But anyway, let's get the house cleaning out of the way, and then we'll get you into this interview. It's a long one with Marc, but a good one. Go over and check out our previous shows over at deluxeedition.show. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Deluxe Edition Pod. You could support the show by buying a t-shirt over at whatamaneuver.net/collections/deluxe-edition, or you could join our Patreon by going to patreon.com/deluxe-edition-pod. And don't forget to check out the other great shows over on our network, the Deluxe Edition Network, at deluxeeditionnetwork.com. And the podcast of the month this month is My Good Friends Horsing Around over on they're on Spotify and every other major platform. It's my barber Joel and his other the other barbers at Red Horse Hair Salon in Temple, Pennsylvania. So if you're ever in the area, go get your hair cut there, or just stop in and say hello. They would definitely love to see you.
Sweet.
Ray, your plugs, please.
My plugs are, I am Ray. I am the host of 10 Cent Beer Night Podcast, Spotify only. Come visit me on Instagram and Facebook. Leave a message. Go over to TeePublic and buy some of my shit. You can get a great coffee mug, and you can actually drink whiskey out of a coffee mug. So it's a good buy.
You can drink whiskey. Here's a fun fact about whiskey, Ray.
Yeah.
You can drink it out of just about anything.
That's pretty true.
As we find out on our other friends over at the Barrel Aged Flicks podcast.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So check them out. Check everyone else out over at deluxeeditionnetwork.com. Check Ray out, the 10 Cent Beer Night podcast. And definitely stick around for this interview with Marc Singer.
Let's do it.
As you can see, a lot has changed here since the last time that you have been here. I just got a notification actually on my Facebook. We get notifications. It's been 1 year almost to the day since you've been on the show last.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
in a lot of the lore of this kind of media, whether it was on television or over the internet, recurrent guests are a kind of a feature that people aspire to be, and that it shows something about the show. I don't know how to articulate it right now. That'll be a hindrance when we actually start talking, but it's something, and I'm appreciative of that. That means that you and I have been friends for a long time, and Ray, we're just beginning a friendship that I hope will prove to be as as compelling and interesting to me and as important to me as Casey and mine is.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it because you're a very interesting fellow.
Yeah, that's one way of putting it.
Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about, yes, you have mentioned that, we have become friendly over the course of the last year.
He's downgraded it. He's downgraded it a few degrees from friends to friendly.
We are friends. I'm getting to that. But the first time that I ever met you outside of the podcast was at Pensacola, the Pensacon.
Yeah.
I made a bet with I took my nephew. I say that I take him, but I really like to go and meet everyone also, and we're on our way there from Tallahassee. And I say, I say, when we hook up with Mark, we'll probably be going out to dinner with him and, hanging out all night and whatnot. We get there and I'm like, I have my wallet and I'm like, hi, Mr. Singer. And I got my picture with you, Len, later in the day. I got my autograph or whatever. And then as soon as we left the table, my nephew, oh yeah.
You're the man. Yeah. We all set ourselves up that way, don't we? That was a weird time because we'd already met via the internet, and then there you were, face to face with me, and because of the noise and the other distractions, I didn't recognize who you were in the same way that people walking down the street might not recognize some celebrity until somebody nudges them and says, do you know who that is? And so when it was all over and you told me that story, I was as stunned as anybody could be. You mean you were standing there face to face with me and neither of us knew who we were? That was the bit of the Twilight Zone, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes, but since then, we have now become friends. You've invited me into your home a few times, and it's been great.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, is it okay if I talk about the time that I came to your house?
Yeah, the windows are closed. The neighbors can't hear it. Go ahead, but is this entertainment or is it evidence?
No, it's entertainment.
Okay, all right, that's okay then.
So we were doing a little exercise, like a little acting exercise.
Oh yeah,
you were having me read Macbeth.
Yeah.
And after I've been watching a lot more of your movies lately, leading up to this, and the way that you can switch your character, like, so in your living room, sitting there, you did something where you turned on me as a way to show me.
That's why I don't get invited back to parties.
But I was like, I mean, I know it was like just acting, but it was like, holy shit, like I'm actually a little scared here. Like, how do you change your character so quickly? Like, and like, if you have to be an angry character or a mean character, what are you thinking about? Like, what goes through your head? Because some of the movies that I've been watching recently you've been a bad guy in some of them.
It's one of the underlying features of the acting profession or the acting trade. You could call it the acting craft. I call it those things. Sometimes it produces art, but mostly it's a trade or a craft. And one of the keys to the trade or the craft that eventually comes over people who are serious about the work and serious about their own development in the work is the ground rule, which we're not allowed in real life. Because in real life, you can't turn to somebody across well, you can more and more these days, unfortunately, but you can't just turn to somebody on the street and say, listen, you son of a bitch. You can't say that because the chances are you'll get run over or knocked down, one or the other, or find yourself in an altercation. But by the rules of acting, nobody can do anything that isn't written on the page. And so the idea that I'm able to express anger or joy or hysteria or ecstasy or any other emotion, or any actor is based on that ground rule, which is that acting itself depends upon the license and the freedom to be able to express the things that we're not allowed to express in everyday life. We have them all the time. We feel frustrated and angry that somebody cuts us off in traffic or gets the seat we wanted to sit in the movie theater or something like that. But we can't say anything about it. We can't even say to the girl across the counter, "You're so beautiful." Or to anybody that you meet on the street, "I think you're a wonderful person," because it's not within the rules. But in acting, you get to say whatever is on the page, and you get to say it in whatever way you like, as long as the common rules of aggression and the limits of aggression are adhered to. Man, that's some long answer, isn't it?
It's good though.
Is this from? We both just recently watched the movie House Hunting.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's what Casey's alluding to here is that you get pretty crazy in that movie.
Yeah. That was a bizarre movie. Boy, that was one of those movies where it was one of those acting experiences where art mirrors life. That house that we filmed in was a genuinely spooky house. It sat out on a little crest of hill in what in another land would be called the moors. And it was in the late fall or early winter. And so the trees were basically bare. And it was just desolate, dark, and spooky all the time. And so the idea of feeling displaced sort of, it came with every dawn, because all you had to do was walk toward that house and you would feel like, oof, let's get inside and see how we survive today. You know, sometimes, and the best of times, the surrounding creates a lot of the mood and a lot of the tonality that you bring out of it. And that was certainly one of the cases. Yeah.
So that movie was actually shot in an actual house, not on sets at all?
No, that was actually shot in a house. In fact, I believe, I don't want to misrepresent it, but I believe it was the director's home in which he was raised as a child, which may which may have something to do with the strange turn of mind that lay behind that depiction. But the house was definitely a presence, and I think he really succeeded in making that evident in the film.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Oh, I appreciate it. Thanks.
Talking about spooky stuff before we go back into what we were talking about. Do you believe in ghosts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I not only believe in ghosts. I've had experiences that absolutely convince me that there's other dimensionality to existence than we find ourselves blunted to for most of the hours of the day and night. Oh, absolutely. Can I tell you a ghost story?
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's a ghost incident in an apartment building in New York City overlooking Riverside Drive. An apartment building that was probably built around the beginning of the 20th century. Big high vaulted ceilings and a massive fireplace and massive living room, dining room, kitchen, maid servants, quarters, things like that. Massive, overlooking the Hudson River. And I was there with a couple of other members of my family and my wife. And it was the home of a director and his significant other. And when we came in the door to have dinner that evening, during the conversation, he said, "You know, the place is haunted." And we said, "Oh, well, it seems a little haunted." And he said, No. I mean, it's genuinely haunted. And so we were spending the evening and got to that kind of lull in the conversation where people were wondering, is it time to go home? Or, you know, what are we going to do with the next half hour we're supposed to be here? And what we did was we sat around a round oak table, a massive old oak table, and we cut out the letters of the alphabet and the numbers 1 to 10 and yes and no, like on a Ouija board. And we spread the numbers 1 through 10 here and the alphabet 1, A, B, C, D through Z over there. Geez, I know I'm not drunk. I can do the alphabet part. Okay, and then we had the yes and the no. And then we took a regular whiskey tumbler, a big, heavy cut glass whiskey tumbler, and turned it upside down and put it in the center of the table. I know this is a long preamble, but we'll get there. Everybody then was asked to just touch the glass in the lightest way, just touch the glass with the tip of their finger. And in the instant that we barely touched the glass, it began revolving around the table, began revolving around and around. And the lights were up, by the way. The lights were up, was no spooky atmosphere with candles and booga booga. It was that. So the host then began to ask questions. Are you here? Did you used to live in the house? Did the thing, and it gave coherent answers, and the answers were all absolutely relevant to the situation we were sitting in. And it said that it had hidden money in the fireplace, and that there was, it had somebody go over and play a scale on the piano because he used to be a musician, and all of this tallied with the history of the house. Still with me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Only one person at the table didn't want to touch the glass, and that was the director's significant other. Didn't want to touch the glass. And said, "I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this." And it got so that your arm was tired from following this glass around. See, it was moving so much and so vigorously. And sometimes it would get excited and knock all the letters off the table. And the host would yell, "Stop that now, stop, just calm down." And we'd pick up all the papers and stuff and put them back on the table. It was fascinating. And finally, there was just myself, because your arm would get tired. So people would take their hand off the glass, but it would continue to move with only 1 or 2 fingers barely touching it. And there was only myself and one other touching the glass, someone I could trust completely, barely. And the glass was just sort of doing this, just a little bit. And the one at the table said, "I don't feel comfortable about this." That person finally just barely touched the glass. And the glass flew off across the room like it had been hit by a hockey stick, like that, and exploded against the wall into shards no bigger than this. It was, if somebody had been standing between that glass and the wall, they would have been injured. But it shattered, it exploded against the wall. And so you ask me if I think, and everybody went, "Geez, look at the time. It's been a wonderful meal. I don't think I'll digest it, but I'm going to go home and see if I can go to sleep." But yeah, so I definitely believe that there's an other dimensionality to our processes. Yeah.
Hey, wow, that's a crazy story.
It's out there. I've had a couple more, but I mean, that's it. I heard somebody else say once they don't play with Ouija boards and stuff like that. They said it just doesn't seem fair to be dithering with other forces that you know not of, to quote Hamlet.
The reason I brought that up is while we were emailing this week, I was in it was called, and Ray and I were just talking about it before you jumped on it. It was called the Mizpah. It's between Reno and Las Vegas in Tonopah, Nevada.
Oh yeah,
and it was built in 1907. This place, and apparently, I was just about to tell Ray this right before you jumped on. So I booked a hotel. I use, like, sometimes when there's not bigger hotels in the town, I use Expedia, and I did that for this town, and I came up with the Mizpah, and I go and I check in, I drive there. It took me like 3.5 hours to drive there, and I check in, I get a shower, I call my girlfriend, and I say, hey, I'm at the Mizpah in Tonopah, and she Googles it and she said, oh, do you know that's the most haunted hotel in America? What? I did not know that. Expedia failed to tell me that.
But
Yeah.
you had the option to stay in the Clown Hotel because you thought, no, I'm going to pass on the Clown Hotel and go to this nice safe motel.
Yeah, the Clown Hotel, too spooky.
Yeah, no, I'm not staying in it. Well, I'm not staying in anything where the door opens to the outside. It's just not, I don't know. I need a hallway to walk into.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and in that hotel, you had a hallway to hear them coming down.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The reason I wanted to get into you acting mean and the angry character, are there any characters that you've ever had to play over the course of your career where you had trouble getting into character? Because I just watched a role of yours the other day where I don't think it's something you could get away with today. It was in a movie called A Man Called Sarge.
Oh yeah,
where you played Kraut. I forget.
Yeah. General Von Kraut. Yeah. We filmed that in Israel.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to talk to you about.
That was deep.
So, what was it like? Like, did you get any shit for playing a Nazi?
Sure did. Yeah. Well, that's a question that covers a lot of territory, and I'll bet you a lot of actors and directors and producers and writers could answer in the affirmative for being in situations or accepting roles or assignments that cause them, shall we say, consternation. Before I get to A Man Called Sarge, I was filming here in town. I just come to Los Angeles off of the stage from doing, in fact, The Taming of the Shrew, and I was finding a lot of work in those days, and I was, I believe, I was playing in a mini series, either 79 Park Avenue or The Contender. So I was in a very enviable position, working at Universal Studios, I believe it was. And then I got a call that someone was interested. David Wolper was his casting agent, was interested in seeing, who had seen me in The Taming of the Shrew, was interested in me coming in and reading a role on Roots, Alex Haley's Roots, the next generation, not the first one, but the second. And I went in and gave a pretty good audition as a terrible redneck bigot around the post-Civil War days in the South. And the use of the N-word was liberal throughout the portrayal. So anyway, now I was the hottest thing in town, in my own opinion, because I not only was playing in my own miniseries, the starring role over here, but then as well, I was double cast because I was going to be doing an important miniseries over here. And that's legendary. That's the kind of contractual situation that you hear about people in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s being in. But the night before my first show, and I was very new to film. I mean, I was learning how to act on film. I'd acted on a stage long enough to know how to act on stage, but acting on film is a different kettle of fish. But I went to bed that night thinking, boy, tomorrow I go on stage in front of those cameras. I'm going on stage in front of those cameras in Roots Part 2. I said, tucking the blankets up under my chin. Tomorrow I get it. And I'm going to say the N-word to this guy in front of 22 million people.
and in front of black people too. I mean, there's
in front of everybody. I'm going to be, Marc Singer is going to be out there saying the N-word, the N-word, the N-word, the N-word, the N-word over and over and over again, hatefully and degradingly, in shot after shot after shot after shot throughout this assignment. And I broke out into an absolute cold sweat. And I didn't sleep well that night, and I had to remind myself that I was dedicating the work to the cause of enlightenment, not on behalf of degradation, in order to sort of talk myself down out of it. So the seriousness of the assignments that we assume, and the responsibility that we have to bringing them off with some sense of value toward humanity is very real for us. But what were we talking about before? There was another one that you were talking about.
A Man Called Sarge.
A Man Called Sarge. And in A Man Called Sarge, I was the German General von Kraut, and we filmed this in. It was a comedy, a World War II comedy. Get this, filmed in Israel. Ha ha. So, yeah. So here I am with butter yellow hair when I first got over there. Turned snow white by the end of the filming, but I was. It was butter yellow, and in those days I was pretty buff, and so here I was striding around in Israel with this hyper World War II Aryan look about me, and the response from people who had suffered through World War II was something I'll never forget, because I was there to make a film, and a funny one at that. And the unintended consequences had an indelible impression on me, I can assure you. I'll tell you another story about being over there, by the way, talking about interesting moments in filming. Wow, see, that's when you were asking me about showing anger or something like that. The other thing about acting is that you have to. You know this, Ray, I'm sure, and Casey, you as well. This in performing, you have to be able to absorb and reflect upon the emotions that flow through you at any given time. So, speaking about the ghost story, it actually freaked me out again. And then speaking about the moment in Israel, brought back to me the emotions of that moment. I won't give them a name. There were too many. But while we were in Israel, we were filming a battle sequence. And we were in a box canyon like this, you see, with high walls on either side and then a curved ending to it here. And down below in the box canyon, the props department and the set decorators were burning old tires. And we had a couple of Sherman tanks down there rumbling around, and some old World War II type half tracks and Jeeps and things like that to simulate the remnants of a battle that had just been fought. And so while they were filming that, members of the crew and the cast, we were standing up on the rim of this canyon, you see, looking down at this stuff. And somebody in the company had failed to inform the Israeli Air Force that we were filming a battle scene. Jesus. And so suddenly, coming at us across the desert on the deck was a squadron of 4 or 5 F-15s. And I mean, screaming right at us. And because we were up on the canyon rim, those of us who were not down below, they were coming in at exactly our level. And they got the message at that last moment, it seems. But one of them did the most extraordinary thing. This F-15, this big hulking Phantom, it was the F-15 Phantom, I think is what they call them, the ones they used in Vietnam. It came screaming in right across my line of vision. Right across my line of vision. Yeah, I got to do this for camera. Right across my line of vision. And he went and I could see the pilot in the cockpit. And Jesus. He went, and he looked out the window, looked out the cockpit at me. He went, and disappeared up into the sky like a rocket ship. But he stood that thing on its tail in midair and stopped for a nanosecond. Boom, and gone. And that's how close we were to the action there. And everybody went. So filming, huh? Yeah.
That leads me into one of my. I want to go back to.
I don't know if I'll
movie.
Be able to sleep tonight. This may be a week later after Halloween, but for me, it's Halloween now, a night early. Holy God!
I want to go back into Man Called Sarge, but before that, is that the craziest thing that's happened? Like,
In the
what am I
film
trying to
industry?
say?
Not in anybody's career in the film industry is that the case. Not by a long shot. I was in Bulgaria. Almost exactly a year after the wall came down, making a film over there. And so essentially it was essentially a détente was what we were practicing, which means everybody breaks down the barriers. We're all friends now. Glasnost, everybody's happy. All brothers and sisters here. Yeah, bullshit. The government was no different there than it was ever before. It was simply less overt to foreign eyes, but absolutely the iron fist as usual. People would walk up to you on the street. Honestly, I'd be walking down the street when I wasn't working, which was rare, but walk down the street and somebody would come up to you and say, "Can you get my son out of the country?" And go, "No, I can't get your son." "Why would you?" "No, I don't even know who you are." "Don't, my God Almighty," because you have no idea who that is. And that happened more than once. "Can you get my son out of the country? He's a dentist. He's a doctor. Can you get him out of the country?" I mean, as if that isn't bizarre enough, we had a fight sequence on a tram. There's a 2 or 3 car tram that was, maybe it was only a 1-car tram. I can't remember now. It's been a while. But it travels through the center of, I want to say Sofia was where we were filming, Sofia, Bulgaria. It was a spy movie that we were doing. And I was an agent. And the bad guy and I were having a fight on board the tram. So the cameras are off in the distance with telephoto lenses, filming this fight that we're having in the tram. You know, we're going at it, bam, bam, struggling up against the walls and falling down on the seats and pulling up, and the camera's following the tram and following there. Suddenly the tram stopped, and the guy that I was fighting stopped, and we both stopped, and we looked out, and there are all these armed men standing around the outside of the tram. Because again, nobody had informed the local police. And all the time that I was whacking this guy around and that he was whacking me around in return, we were in the crosshairs of their snipers who thought that they might have to intervene to save the people on the tram who were actually our extras. So, I mean, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So there's, movie making.
Totally safe.
Totally safe.
Totally safe.
First shot one of my first shots in the Beastmaster. Guy comes riding in on a horse, and I run out and say, "Stop. Say what you want." And the horse ran over me, and that was it. That was okay. All right.
Oh man, I remember when we talked the first time we talked to you about the Beastmaster, how the one guy in the one stunt where all the fire was raining down, and you can see the one guy get up and run off camera.
Dead guy said, I may be dead, but this is hell. I'm not staying. There's been a mistake.
Going back into A Man Called Sarge, I don't want to spend too much time on that.
I may be having a catharsis here at any moment. I hope to God it's followed by a laughing jag.
I thought it was very funny.
I'll take over after you do this one, Casey, because I got a much lighthearted movie I want to talk about.
Okay. Go ahead. What is it, Casey? Go ahead.
I thought this movie was very funny, and for the time, this movie worked great. A year later, Hot Shots came out, and it was like one of the best movies, of the year. I just think it came out at the wrong time, maybe. I don't know. It was. I thought it was very funny, and if anyone likes those old like the parody movies, definitely go back and watch it.
Which one are you referring to?
A Man Called Sarge.
Oh, A Man Called Sarge. Oh, yeah, yeah. That was. I think it was the. I think it's the. I would love to say the first and only, but I think it was the second time that I ever appeared professionally in public in drag, and
Yes. Yes.
they made high heel shoes for me. I'm like an 11 and a half foot. So I'm walking onto the set, and the crew is not being kind, and but what I came to understand was the hell that women go through wearing high heels. I have no idea how they do that. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they do it. Ray, go ahead.
All right. So in 1997, you were in a movie called Lancelot, Guardian of Time, which I happen to like a lot because I love movies like that.
Thanks.
Because it doesn't take itself too seriously.
No, it doesn't.
There's parts in there where like Zach Ward, he's got like a fight scene with Arthur on the picnic table and they become friends and stuff. So this movie, though, I think what makes it really fun is your Shakespearean training. Because the way you talk in this movie really sells it.
Wow. Okay. I appreciate that. It was a very low budget film, modestly made, modestly priced. And I had so much fun working on that. You never know. You just can't tell on some of these things. The production values can be uneven. And you just give it the best shot you can. And you know that there are going to be some frayed edges here and there. I thought that film, I enjoyed working on that film a great deal. And I had a chance to do some stuff that I never had a chance to do before. CGI fight with a dinosaur.
Yeah, I was going to say there's a scene in there where you're battling and John Saxon's character has this sword flying around in the air.
Right.
Is that on a string and you're just whacking it and spinning it, or how did they pull that off?
They had, as a matter of fact, I believe it was our stunt coordinator I'll go to hell for forgetting his name just now. Our stunt coordinator, who was very, very talented, was not only helped choreograph the fights, but also was a kind of an expert at CGI in a low budget setting like that. And while I don't remember precisely the sword aspect, I imagine it would be the same thing. But he made an entire Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton, as I recall, fight me in a museum. And the thing, there are times in your career where you get to say to yourself, you're in the presence you're standing on the shoulders of greatness from the past. And in that sense of fighting that CGI dinosaur, when I saw the final effects of it on the screen, I thought, this looks like a Harryhausen movie.
I love Harryhausen, so that's why part of the reason I love this movie.
Yeah, I do too. And that was one of the most attractive aspects of the film. Sometimes you do it for something just like that. I was able, years and years later, I was able to act in the resurrected new version of The Twilight Zone. Something that I saw when I was a kid. I saw its first, every time it was on every week, it was brand new. And then I grew up to be an actor and actually got to act on The Twilight Zone. It's a good profession for that kind of dream realization. Yeah.
Yeah. Twilight Zone is something when I was in high school, we watched that like every night.
Yeah.
Just over and over. Every night we watched Twilight Zone. But yeah, that, what is that, 88-ish when you did Twilight Zone? Somewhere around there.
I think so, yeah.
But you did the baseball episode, correct?
Wow. Get a load of you.
I know some things.
Not only did I do the baseball episode, but you can go through a whole career and people will say, what's the best thing you ever did, or what's the thing you enjoyed most, and they'll expect you to say one of your better known pieces. that Twilight Zone is almost my favorite piece ever that I ever did. I had so much, I so empathized with that character, and I had such a good time playing it. I'm knocked out that you saw that. Not many people.
Oh,
Uh,
I absolutely love the Twilight Zone. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah, I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, that was fun. I remember there was some contention about whether or not I would play the adenoidal broken nose of that player, because he was injured. And I remember that I was playing him like this, and that added something to the kind of the childlike quality of it that really appealed to me when I was doing it. And there was some contention. They say, you can't do that. You can't do that. Why you're Marc Singer. And Jesus God.
Going back to the Dragon Quest movie, do you like doing CGI stuff? Because you've done some more of it since then.
I do. I like CGI. I like. Listen, you have to move with the times. I come from the. I'm from the Stone Age of filmmaking, where people did their own stunts and where stunts were all done basically live. Harryhausen was not too distant a historical figure to still be relevant in the way films were made in those days. I make the reference, I think I've made it to you before, Casey, which is that, John Wayne riding his horse with Pedro Armendáriz and Harry Carey Jr. hot on his tail across the plains. That was no stunt. That's what those guys did. They brought that to work with them. And so the same thing was true for me, is that whatever I brought to work with me. So CGI is a wonderful thing in the way that it can enhance the background, but I think it's more convincing and more fun for an audience when they see the actual practical goods happening right in front of their eyes.
Yeah, Ray and I are big fans of the practical effects.
Absolutely.
On this show.
I'm sorry, fans of the what?
Of practical effects?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah. Geez, I was caught in a reverie there for a moment.
I want to go back to the beginning of your career, Mark, because I've heard you say on several interviews that the first thing that you ever did on film was the Planet of the Apes. But I found an episode of Columbo that you were in.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
And I watched it the other day. We love Peter Falk. We just had Ed Begley Jr. on last week, and he did an amazing an amazing Peter Falk impression. He was in The In-Laws with him. So your character, you were called Rocky a few times by the other doctor, and then he called you Roger after that. And it was a very short scene, but the lady, it was a very pivotal part in the show because the lady missed the murder and she missed everything that was going on because she was so intrigued with what you were doing on television.
Yeah, well, it was about as important as being the toaster that you drop into somebody's bathwater. Wow, that's great. As far as Peter Falk is concerned, I was watching a rerun of Columbo because I just think they're great. I just think they're terrific. There's so much to recommend them. I mean, sometimes television or film, besides the actual value of the entertainment, it's a time capsule. You can see what people thought of how people interact, how people live, what the sets were like, what looked like fancy in those days, what was luxurious. Are you kidding me? Those big Chinaware lamps and that gigantic ashtray. Those were things that people had in their homes. That
That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite parts of that episode is when Columbo, I'm talking about the episode that you're in particularly, he ashes in a big silver dish and the lady starts screaming at him and I just thought it was an ashtray.
Well, I was watching one of these. And they're like anything else. Some of them are better than others. Some better written. Some of them are better directed. Some of them are better acted. So I was watching one with, in fact, with my sister-in-law. I was watching one of these Columbos, and she's not in the entertainment business. She's just a civilian watching a show. And I said, "This never did this. A great director." She said, "What?" I said, "This particular Columbo." I said, "This is fantastic. Look what the director's doing. Never mind. I mean, the story's good and the acting is wonderful, but look what the director is doing. Look. See what this is." And I would point out something in the shot, and I'd go, "See that? See that? Look. Oh, and then that means see why he's doing that." And he said, "The thing. You know who directed it?
Oh,
Peter Falk.
wow.
Isn't that amazing? You could see the quality of that talent, how great a talent that man had to be able to not only produce a character like that out of the ether, but then the technical skill to say, "By the way, I'll direct this one. Watch this. I'll show you how to direct."
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great show. So I know you only had a small role in it, but did you get to meet any of the other characters? Like that episode had Martin Landau, of course, Peter Falk, Julie Newmar, and Dabney Coleman.
You're absolutely right when you say that really is the first thing. That probably is the actual very first thing that I ever did professionally on film, originating or in Hollywood, and that was in Hollywood. And it was certainly in those days I was working at the American Conservatory Theater in San Francisco, and I was here in town and was cast in that role. I think because people may have thought there was a future in me. I don't know, but it was. I mean, I looked at it as more of a kind of almost a screen test, but I certainly didn't know anything about how films were made or any of that kind of stuff. So when people ask me, what's my first film, I go to the Planet of the Apes, because by then it's something that other people they might recognize, and at the same time they could identify with some of the naivete of the performer or the performance, and get a sense of who I was or where I came from, stuff like that. Something like that, like on Columbo, that's that small, and I was on television. It's good because that's how things work, and it's fun to. As I said, you might as well have been the toaster that they throw into the water when the guy's taking his bath. But that was my first moment to walk into a big studio and actually get made up by a professional makeup artist in the film industry, and have people yell quiet on the set and let's go for another one and stuff like that. Yeah.
Well, it's a great episode. I recommend it for anyone who's a fan of Mark. Definitely check it out. My favorite scene of this show is when Columbo walks in and Julie Newmar is stretching out on the balcony, and she's just give me a minute. He goes, "Oh, I don't mind watching."
Julie Newmar. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original cat lady.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, another great show.
Boy, I leaned in for that one, didn't I?
Yeah.
Let's talk Julie Newmar.
You've been on screen with quite a few beautiful women.
I was on screen with Joan Collins. In boy, I want to say, boy, it'll come to me later. But this shows you that, boy, if there's nothing that proves that this is live, that will. And we were sitting at a table or a desk, and we were discussing something very intensely, she and I, what about this and what about that and so forth. And I get up and I say, well, I got to go now. I'll see you later. And I exit behind the camera, and she picks up the telephone. I turned around to watch her performance when I had exited camera. Turned around, and she picked up the telephone, Joan Collins, and it was as though she was the light. She lit up that set. Just suddenly went boom. And I remember standing behind the camera thinking, that's movie greatness. That's what movie greatness is. It's the ability to do that. What on earth did she just do? How did that happen? How on earth did that happen? And she got up and she made her exit, and then she turned off the light, and that was it. She was like, okay, now it's unbelievable. It's extra. Can I tell you one more? Geraldine Page, you were talking about actresses.
Absolutely.
Speaking of actresses, I may have told this story before. I know I've told it in some time, but it really is. It bears repeating because Ray, you and I were talking earlier, I think, about acting being a craft. Mm-hmm. Geraldine Page I played her son in a movie for television called Something for Joey, about John Capoletti, who won the Heisman Trophy and whose younger brother was afflicted with leukemia. And he dedicated the Heisman Trophy to his younger brother as being the true brave hero in the house. So we were doing that portion where it's the award ceremony, and Geraldine Page is sitting with my family, my screen family, around a table, and I'm Capoletti. I'm up on the dais and making my speech. And it comes to the part of the speech where I say, but most of all, I'd like to thank my mother. Now, it's her close-up. So I'm off camera up on the stage, and the camera's on her now. She's framed in the camera. And I say, but most of all, I'd like to thank, and a tear breaks from her eye and rolls down her cheek. And I continue, my mother, for being, wonderful, and for the things that she's done, and so on, so on, so on, so on, so on. Cast and crew is just flabbergasted. See, and the director says, cut. He says, print, because it was all on film in those days. Print. She says, no. She says, do another one. That was no good. Everybody goes, what do you mean? That was fantastic. She says, no. Makeup, come here, makeup. Let me have makeup. Let me refresh. So makeup comes and they dab around her eye and stuff. And while they're making up her eye, she says to her eye, wait for your cue. Now the director says, the assistant director says, roll, and then director calls action. And I do that same speech and I say, but most of all, I'd like to thank my ma, and on the first syllable of mother, I'd like to thank my ma, a tear breaks from her eye and rolls down her cheek. Jesus. And director says, cut, print. And she says, that's the one.
Amazing.
You work with people like that and you just go, well, that's it. I got to tear up my card. I don't belong in this business.
Hey, they got to have somebody to say the other lines.
Yeah, that's right. Good for you. Thanks. Thanks.
Somebody's got to do it.
Between the ghost stories and that faint phrase, I'll be sleeping under the bed tonight.
Hey, you were on the Love Boat for 2 episodes as Judy's ex-husband, who's trying to win her back. And this is much farther along into your career than that first Columbo thing. By this point, did you kind of have a feel for how it all worked? And, was it much more comfortable?
It was a lot more comfortable by then. A couple of interesting things. The Love Boat that I was in, as opposed to being filmed in the studio, we actually went to Europe and filmed that on a Love Boat, on a big, what was then, in those days, considered a large luxury cruise liner. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, I had a great time, and everybody in the cast was wonderful. I met Trevor Howard, who I had admired God, Jesus, revered for all of his work for so long. And while we were at sea, okay, so we're heading out of Portsmouth, or I guess it was, or Southampton in England. We're going to sail through the English Channel, or around the tip of England through the English Channel, and then we're going to cut through a canal into the Black Sea, and we're going to sail around the Black Sea. So first, there's the lifeboat drill on board the boat. They say, okay, well, everybody go to your assigned, put on your life vest, and go to your assigned boat, so you'll know where it is. And everybody puts on their life vest. We're tied up at the dock. We haven't left yet, Southampton. And you go and you stand by your lifeboat. So you've got 9 people, let's say, on your boat, and 9 people down to the next one, and the next one, the next one. And you can't help yourself. You stand there like this. You go like, okay, I got a lifeboat. And you go like this, and then you go. You stand there and you go. And you look at the lifeboat down the way, and you go, they'll never make it. And then you look down this way and you go, yeah, they'll do okay. They'll do okay. And you look at your own crew. You look at your own crew, and you go, okay, all right, okay. I'll bet I'm not the only guy that felt that way. Yeah. Take a good picture.
I bet a lot of people wanted to be on your boat.
We almost needed it. We were heading. I think we had just gone around the tip of England, or just coming out of the English Channel, one or the other, and we got hit by a rogue wave, and we got hit broadside. And I was in the dining room at the time. And when you're on those boats, that's where you always are, is in the dining room. So I was sitting in the dining room, and suddenly the entire dining room went like this. And the dining room is on an upper deck. And I was looking down across the dining room through the windows at the water of this gigantic liner that we were on. And then it righted itself, and then it went even higher up, and you're looking right down into the ocean. And then
Jesus.
it evened out, and we continued on with the love boat.
That's when you're trying to decide if you want to grab another drink or your life vest at that moment.
Yes. Yes, exactly. I saw the movie, the Titanic. Yeah.
Or the Poseidon Adventure. That would be another bad one to conjure up at that moment.
While we're talking about television shows that you did, we recently lost Angela Lansbury, October 11th. I know you worked with her on Murder, She Wrote. What could you tell us about working with her?
She's a great lady. And a modest lady, totally unassuming, and a true. And I want to say that I wish I had another way of coming up with this just off the top of my head, but like a historic professional, in the sense that that she carried the history of professionalism with her to and from the set. She was always pleasant company. She was fun, enjoyed herself being on the set, enjoyed whatever it was that you were doing on the set. Just one of the gang, but special, just really special. I don't know, how am I going to say this? There was occasionally in town, you're invited to participate in some black tie ceremony of various sizes. Can be 1,000 people, can be 200 people, in honor of some exalted and duly so member of our community, of our creative community. And there was a tribute being paid to Angela Lansbury in boy, I wish I could remember which theater it was. It was a very, very big theater. There was easily 1,000 people there. This was years after I had done Murder, She Wrote. And we'd only met the once on the show and only did a few scenes together, and that was that. She's worked with hundreds, thousands of people in her career. And I made my way down the aisle when the event was over and people were walking up and saying, "Oh, Angela, darling," and kissing her on both cheeks and doing stuff like that. And she was preoccupied with some other people. And as I approached, she looked around and happened to catch my eye. And she said, "Oh, Mark, hi, good to see you. How are you, sweetheart?" Bam, just like that, you know? So you can't say enough good things about her. And the other thing is that, you know, in this town, one of the humbling things is to watch older films and to see people that you've worked with and to find another film and another film and another film and another film that they've done that you didn't know that they'd been in, and to see another extraordinary performance and another extraordinary performance and another one. It's just, I mean, it takes all you've got just to get on the set sometimes and stand up to them and say hello, you know?
Yeah. That's what it's like to do this show. Like all the
Yeah.
research that we put into this show. Last week, I mentioned we interviewed Ed Begley Jr.
Right.
And I started doing more research on his father than on him. His dad was a terrific actor. And then you look into it, and he dropped out of school in the 5th grade and got into the carnivals and like didn't even begin acting until he was in his 40s. And it's just amazing.
Ed Begley Sr. is between my daughter and me. Ed Begley Sr. in this house is an icon. And we refer to Ed Begley Sr. constantly. He's a go-to guy when we talk about things that are most enjoyable in film. And if one of us does something that reminds us of something that happened to Ed Begley in some film somewhere, because he was always put upon, you know, he was always the guy that was having a stroke when he was really such a great guy, or he was the one who robbed the jewelry store and got shot 12 times. And there's Harry Belafonte and Robert Ryan saying, "Throw us the keys, throw us the keys." And he's crawling along the pavement. Ed Begley, he's the best. He's the best. And I've seen him deliver reams of dialogue that are just transfixing. He's just fantastic. You bet. Those are the people. Those are the giants whose footsteps we walk in, and consistently we find things that in our predecessors' work that we draw from and emulate and take lessons from. Dana Andrews is a real favorite of mine. Dana Andrews can do more with an unmoving expression. He can go 78 different places with that. And you just say, how in the hell does he do that? How does he do that? He's a wonderful actor. Yeah. You bet.
Yeah. You and I have talked off screen about some of the older actors you mentioned earlier, John Wayne, like coming to work riding a horse. Like that's what they did. They grew up doing that. And then they, you know, conveniently got a job being a movie star and having to use those skills that they grew up using.
Yeah, John Wayne conveniently became the most famous movie star in the history of film.
Right. Do you have anything else before I move on to? I have two other things before we move on to fan questions.
I do. I have one more. Okay. Dan Turner, Hollywood Detective. I love
Tulsa, Oklahoma.
That noir detective talk, you know, where it's like she walked into my office and she had the kind of legs that went all the way up and made an ass out of themselves. Like, I love that kind of stuff. And I think this is a fun movie that most people don't realize is out there. I think this is a fun movie.
I do too. There boy, a lot of things to say about that. I had a great deal of fun in Tulsa, Oklahoma. There's always stories from the set, but Dan Turner, I heard Gregory Peck talk this way once about his own work. Dan Turner was, for me, one of those turning points in my own work. Beastmaster was one. The Taming of the Shrew back on stage. That was one. But Dan Turner was a turning point in my own work. I began to approach my characterizations in a different way, and I began to synthesize my own centrality as an acting personality in a different way. And I think one of the things that actors have to deal with is the transition of time and awareness. We start out, all of us in this world, wet behind the ears, and we gradually get drier and drier as we get older and older, until, like today, you can feel absolutely arid. But one way or the other, you do deepen and broaden your understanding of yourself and your understanding of your place in the world, and realize that that you would like to be more expressive of this growing awareness. And that's where I was in Dan Turner. That's where I was in Dan Turner.
Yeah, I dig that movie because it also shows your ability to change your voice is pretty cool. Like between that and the other one we talked about, Lancelot.
Yeah.
Just your vocal stylings are so different from movie to movie, and I like that a lot.
Boy, you scare me. You pick right up on it. That's exactly. No, I mean it. You pick right up on it. That's spooky. That was. Look, I work on everybody. If they don't, every actor should work on their craft every day. I don't care whether you're actually employed or unemployed. It doesn't matter, because the free time that an actor spends is there for everybody. And in that free time, you need to be working on what is called your instrument, and the voice is key to that. I have developed a significant relationship with a famous psychologist in Germany, the mother of a friend of mine, and we were discussing she was discussing techniques that she used in her practice, and I was introducing my thoughts about how important the voice is in expressing who we are, which is, germane to her work. And she has adopted some of that into her own process these days with her clients. And so that vocal thing that you were talking about Dan Turner, that was part of the search, and that's part of the search. And you struck right at the nub of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because I won't name names, but there are a lot of actors who are big who you can take the character from each movie, drop them into the other movies, and you wouldn't even see a difference.
Yeah.
And I don't like that. That bothers me.
It's a blessing and a curse. The blessing is that it provides great security and consistency, both for the actor and also for the paying public. But it is a curse in that it's limiting.
Yeah.
We were talking about that with your co-star on V, Jane Badler, a few weeks ago. She had mentioned the same thing. Like, she was working with someone, and I guess they weren't really, they were just like being the same character that they were. And she was like, come on, you have to give me something to work with.
Come on, was it me? Was it me?
Nah, it wasn't you.
No. We're all friends here.
No, it wasn't you, but she was mentioning that same thing, like Ray just mentioned. Like, a lot of the actors today, they don't have that kind of ability. They're just, the same person in every movie.
Well, I think the key again goes back to the conversation that Ray tripped us into, which is about craftsmanship. Is that acting is not it's not a fantasy, it's not a psychotic state, it's not a dream world, it's a craft. If you can teach somebody to be a brain surgeon, given that they have the talent and the inclination, you can certainly teach them how to act. and it is a set of mechanics as definite, or can be a set of mechanics as fundamentally definite as how to build an automobile engine. Where the uniqueness comes in is in the enterprising way in which the component parts relate one to another. That's what makes the individuality.
That's what Jane was talking about, Mark.
Never point your finger at me, young man.
No. But you actually, it reminds me of what Jane actually said.
Excited. It goes like that.
I am excited because
He gets excited.
She said what she was talking about is the other actor. It wasn't what they did. It was that they didn't feel like they were acting with them. Right. She felt like they were just acting for themselves and wasn't giving her anything to work with. Yeah. That's what made her mad.
Yeah. It's a I won't give it any more. I won't give it any more credence than to say that it's a difficulty that we face sometimes, because we take it upon ourselves as professionals to say, I could act opposite a clothing store dummy, and then they put one up in front of you, and you go, well, I guess I can't. But I mean, no, we really do. We rely upon that. I did, as a matter of fact. Well, I'll tell you that story in a minute. But I mean, what Jane, I think, is expressing is not that she couldn't handle this, even if she were just acting opposite a clothing store dummy, but how much better it could have been, how much more exciting, how much more engrossing, how much more captivating and empathetic it could have been, because Jane can do anything. She's, I mean, a professional can. I remember I was in a film in Canada. Boy, there's another one I can't remember the name of. Isn't that weird? Okay, but anyway, I was in a film in Canada, and I was on the rooftop of some shed, and the actress was down below, and she had been having a long, hard couple of days, and it was
Snowman's Pass.
That's the one. That's it. What was it called? Snowman's
Pass.
Snowman's Pass. And whichever actor or actress it was that had been down there was having a long day. The crew was tired. We were all tired. And I said, I was on top of the roof talking to her like this. And that meant that they would have to shoot me, then they would have to shoot her, then they would have to shoot me, and they'd have to shoot this, and they'd have to shoot that, and we'd be there forever. And we were all, it was a great company and a great experience, wonderful actors, had a wonderful time. But I said, you know what, why don't we just do her side, all of her stuff, and let her go home, let her get some sleep, And they said, well, what do you do when we do your close-ups and your shots? I said, I'll do them by myself. It doesn't matter. So she finished and went on home. They turned the camera on me, and I did all the pauses and all the takes. And I said, I don't need anybody reading off camera, because it's not the same as the actress who was here. And I just did all my stuff, You what? Oh my! Well, don't talk to me like that. Oh my gosh, here they come! All right, guys, follow me. And whatever it was, the scene, and off we went. But it can be done that way. I mean, that was the way it was done.
Yeah, I know that because I just watched it today. Nicole Eggert was the co-star in that.
She was wonderful. We had a great time. We had a wonderful time. There's no. I don't mean to imply by any means that it was anything less than my urging that had us film that moment that way. It was just, you know what, it's more expedient. Let's do this. Let's let people get a rest who want to get a rest and deserve it.
Sure. Yeah, but it goes back into what Ray was saying. It's a completely different character than anything else that I've seen you in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. We had a fun time. We had a wonderful time. We filmed that between Vancouver and Whistler Mountain in a place called Squamish Rock. And Squamish is Canada, the west coast of Canada's Half Dome. And so when we first got on the location, people said, well, there are climbers up there. You can see them. And I turned and I looked at this massive stone. And I said, where? And they said, there, right there. Can you see them? There they are. There's 6 of them right up there on the face of it. They were like this, like this. And I'm one of those guys. I get a nosebleed if I stand on a step stool, So they were the climbers who were doing this work with us. They said, we've got some pitons hung up there and some ropes and stuff. You want to climb up there with us? I'm like, you must be out of your mind. You must be crazy. Yeah, that was a wonderful shoot. I think we laughed. All of us laughed from beginning to end, all the way through that. I think we had a great time. I miss. That's one of those shows that I actually miss her. I miss many members of the cast. I made good friends on that. Yeah,
it's a good movie. Most of these movies you can find on, I think they're on Tubi, is where I watched them.
Okay.
All right. I just want to talk about one more of your movies before we move on to the fan questions. Another one I just watched today, Cyberzone, with Matthias Hughes. I think that's how you say it.
Oh yeah.
That guy, I've met you in person now. We've met several times.
Yeah.
I'm 6'2".
Right.
You're tall. You're about the same height, maybe a little taller. He's huge. This guy is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Matthias.
Yeah. He was a lot of fun. And
I got a lot of fun.
I had a lot of fun too, because it's like that Twilight Zone thing where people expected me to project a certain kind of personality and characteristic commonly associated with a leading man, and I loved when he would grapple with me and get me in those, and I begin to whine, ow, 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 ow. I thought that was one of the most fun parts of that. Yeah.
The reason I brought that up is a viewer of ours and a big fan of yours sent us this video, and you do it in this movie Cyberzone, and I want to know where you learned to do this. Maybe you could talk a little bit about this. So I'm going to play this video. Hopefully it works. Your gunplay.
Whatever I was doing, I didn't do it that well, but that's a holdover from my childhood in Texas. I was raised around the King Ranch area, and whenever we could, we didn't have horses ourselves, but boy, we sure climbed up on any horse we could get near that somebody would let us. And then as I came to town here in LA, I was fortunate enough to work with a stuntman named Chuck Bale, and he is legendary in the industry. One of the originators of the Stuntmen's Association, the first stuntmen's union or guild in the industry. And he was a cowboy through and through. He used to trade horses, used to ride the rodeo, came into town himself and became a stuntman when Westerns were everything that you saw on television. And he schooled me on horsebacking, and he schooled me on, and then with him, along with him came my acquaintance. I was very honored to become a friend of Rex Rossi, 7-time world trick roping champion, and also the double of Gene Kelly in such films as The Three Musketeers and things like that. Extraordinary athlete, and the story I tell about meeting Rex Rossi was that when I was a kid, I remember I had a dream, and in the dream, it was back when cowboys were all the rage, and in the dream I was shooting a silver pistol. No, I was shooting a pistol at the bad guys, and there was a cowboy beside me, and I was just a kid, but he was a grown cowboy like this. And my gun was out of bullets, and the cowboy said, "I've got something for you," and he handed me this silver pistol in the dream, and I remember shooting this. See, I woke up, and I still had the pistol in my hand from the dream. And I walked into where my father was, and I said, "Look what I got out of a dream." And he said, "That's nice." And then I really woke up. I was having a dream in a dream. Decades later, I'm in Hollywood. I meet Rex Rossi. Rex Rossi says, "I've got something for you." And he hands me a silver pistol.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Some of those old stuntman. Yeah, we were talking to Gary Davis, who was a stuntman in Hollywood.
Sure.
Some of those stuntmen, they're just incredible. You and I have talked off screen, off camera about some of the stories about some of the Hollywood stuntman, and it's just some of the stuff that they went through, even before joining the business, is amazing. It's a shame that there weren't podcasts or things like this when they were alive, because some of those guys would have had such incredible stories to tell.
Oh, it's really true. It's really true. The stories that we used to hear secondhand, even though, I was very fortunate to come into town when, I worked with Henry Fonda. I worked with Burt Lancaster. I worked with, Geraldine Page and Maureen O'Sullivan and God, I can't. They just Jack Warden, you name it. I mean, they were here in town working, and so were all the people who made the movies around them. And there were many stories that won't be told now, won't be remembered. That should have been. Yeah.
Yeah. Ray, before we move on to fan questions, do you have anything else for Mark?
I am going to let this go to fan questions because I'm sure at some point Mark will be back and I'll have more questions for him then.
Well, I just want to say before we go to fan questions, I'll probably repeat myself at the end, but you really, Deluxe Edition really runs an extraordinary organization. The kind of questions and the space that's given to the people, to the visitors to express themselves is much appreciated. Thanks, guys. You do an amazing job.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, that's appreciated.
Yeah, I know. When we email back and forth, I still, I'm like, I just got an email from the Beastmaster. It still blows my mind that we're friends, man. It's awesome. How does it feel? How does it feel though to go an hour and 35 minutes without talking about the Beastmaster?
Oh, that's nice. Oh yeah, it's good. It's good. I can't imagine that there isn't a kind of a set story about the Beastmaster that I haven't told already. But there may be. The thing about your podcast and the thing about the interviews that you guys conduct is that the questions are open the door to nuances as opposed to simply the cartoon reconstruction of what a great guy your guest may be.
Sure. Yeah, we tried to not ask the same questions that have been asked, thousands of times since the beginning of your career. Although now we're into fan questions.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Do you like drinking beer in the garage with your friends on a Friday night and just talking about movies, music, pop culture in general? Well then, my friends, I have a great podcast for you to check out. It's called the 10 Cent Beer Night Podcast. My name is Ray. I am the host, and I set out to prove things beyond a shadow of a doubt every time I do one of these things. So let's hang out.
Because interviewers may have heard all of this, but not all the fans have. So that's good.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to actually change this one around because I've heard the answer to this, and I don't think that our friend Ron will mind. It's we run a network. It's called the Deluxe Edition Network, and
Right.
This is a podcast from the network called Barrel Aged Flicks. And Ron would like to know, out of all the animals you worked with on the Beastmaster, which one was your favorite? And I'm gonna switch that to I'm gonna add other than Kipling. Kipling, was that his name?
That's
Because
right.
you've talked
Right.
about
Right.
working with him before.
Right. Oh, is that it? That's a question? Oh, gosh, life is good sometimes. I just sit and contemplate it, because that moment's all about me. Let's see. Kipling, the tiger in Beastmaster was really the paramount experience as far as that kind of stuff is concerned. I rode. This isn't a favorite, as in an emotional connection that I had, but I once rode an extraordinary horse. I once rode in V. There was an episode where I got to imitate some of my favorite Western scenes where you're chasing or being chased by the bad guys and firing your gun over your shoulder at them as they're pursuing. And I was riding a big white horse that used to be, I think, a racehorse. And it was like riding a big, huge balloon tire Schwinn bicycle. It just went like that. And you could ride that horse for a month and never be tired. So I don't know. I've got no answer for that.
Right.
How's that?
Hey, did them two ferrets smell bad in that movie, Beastmaster? Because ferrets are some pretty stinky animals.
It's not. You can't. It's not fair to ask me that question. You have to ask them what they thought of me in return. So I'm gonna pass on that. I don't remember them as being particularly stinky. I just remember that whenever we were in trouble, they'd say, "Get the ferrets. Let's shoot the ferrets."
Did you know that ferrets are a part of the skunk family?
No. I've got, boy, I have like a thousand punchlines for that, and I can't deliver a single one. Nope.
Well, that may be why they, although you didn't smell them, that may be why Ray was asking if they smelled.
Well,
because they
here's
are
why.
part of the skunk family.
Here's why. Because my brother had this girlfriend who had this ferret, and she give this thing a bath every single day. So my brother decided he wanted a ferret. So he bought this ferret, and within 2 days, this thing stank so bad.
I had a girlfriend who wanted me to take a bath every day, and that's a completely different story.
Yeah. That's pretty common, though.
Oh, I guess.
All right. I did have a question in there. Oh, this is a question of mine. You mentioned getting shot at or shooting.
Yeah.
Behind. I watched a few movies of yours within the last couple of days where you're shooting or getting shot at. I don't remember if it was this year or last year, but the thing with Alec Baldwin when he, shot and killed the lady on set. When you're getting shot at, because I've seen you, deliver both. You shoot at people and you've gotten shot at. When you're getting shot at, are you looking at the weapons or are you not even in the range of where they're shooting, or how does something like that work?
You're absolutely right. I check every gun that ever comes on the set that has anything like a round that's going to be fired at anybody, anywhere, ever. That's the first thing I do, and especially if I'm going to be on the receiving end of it. There was a moment when in between Janie Badler and me, where she was coming through the crowd toward me in V, and she had what's called a squib. And a squib is an explosive charge inside her jacket. And I believe she was going to be, an attempted assassination was going to happen. And the squib was supposed to explode as she got close to me. Well, I kept waiting for the explosives expert to push that button and set off that squib. And she got closer and closer and closer and closer and closer. And those things have particles that come out of them. And you can lose a cornea. You can go blind from that explosion. And sure enough, she got closer and closer and closer. And the more closer she got, the more I tried to edge away. And the longer it took for that explosive charge to go off. And eventually it did spray me. But I wasn't injured by it. But yeah, there are a lot of ways in which, even under the most controlled circumstances, accidents can happen on the set. I've had squibs go off closer than I would have wanted them to go off, and other times I've suggested stunts which that I could participate in and be on camera performing, which were vetoed because they seemed too dangerous. Although I felt, and they had to do with explosives and stuff. Although I felt that I could be safely, taken care of while doing it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, things, especially back in the time when you were coming up, you were doing a lot of your own stunts as well, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's true.
All right. Moving on. Tamara Quist would like to know, is there any chance of an autobiography with your life experiences coming out anytime soon? And I would also love to hear more of the cowboy poetry that you did on one of your other appearances on Deluxe Edition.
Oh, I did? What did I do? Do you remember what it was, Casey, at all? Which
I
cowboy?
don't remember
You,
offhand. Ray just listening, so.
Yeah, I was a listener at that point. So I remember you started to tease that you were getting into cowboy poetry. So you did a little verse, couple lines. You didn't do a whole
I remember
lot.
it was something you said you'd do at Christmas time.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah, I could. Yeah, I'm sorry. So what does she want to know? I'm sorry. Do this again. She wanted to know.
The first part was any chance of an autobiography with
The autobiography.
at any time.
Yes, absolutely. It was and I've got the title. I've got two. I have two titles. One of them, I was thinking of either one or the other. The first one was it should be entitled "Where Do You Think You're Going?" And the second one, I think. Thanks, Casey. And the second one would be, which I think, based on the question I just received, would be entitled "So You Think You Can't Sleep?" And so, I can't imagine that an autobiography would be really that compelling to anybody. I don't think I've lived an interesting enough life. And then the other part was the cowboy poetry part, right?
Yep.
I'll give you a teaser, okay, like before. My hoss is at the hitching post and scraping of his muzzle. It ain't his hide he's itching at, but at the bigger puzzle of why it is that he must stand tethered to a log when out upon the open range his breed is meant to jog. He's puzzling out the wherefores and the whys and such, I'd say, that nature or the hand of fate has dealt his cards this way. He's toting up the averages and figuring the odds of why some lives is lived as beasts and others lived as gods. It makes me some uncomfortable to see him in this light and make a vow to hay him good with extra grain tonight. I'll try to ride him easy some tomorrow as we trail, remembering that hoss-like man must suffer some travail ere neath the earth the setting sun when day is done must fall, and he's turned back to shelter in his warm and cozy stall, etc., etc., etc.
Love it, man.
How did you avoid picking up the Texas accent?
Oh, I used to have it. I have remnants of it now. When you first start out acting, if you're classically trained, which I was fortunate enough to be, under the tutelage of Mr. William Duncan Ross, but when you're classically trained, you're encouraged to get rid of all of those hallmarks of regionalism, whether you're from Kentucky or from Birmingham, England, or wherever you're from. But I found as the years have gone by that I miss the elisions and the vernaculars of my childhood, and I think they're more authentic. Even Shakespeare says, for example, he says this is Ulysses reading a letter, and he says, "I do not strain at the position but at the author's drift, who in his circumstance expressly proves that no man is the lord of anything," etc., etc., etc. But the fact is that he says, I don't strain at the position, but at the author's drift. Drift is a cowboy term. What's your drift, partner? I don't get your drift. And so if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for me.
So where did you come up? How did you come up with the voice for the cowboy poetry thing there?
That just to me is the voice of the narrator who tells it. I don't know. It just,
Sure.
somebody else might do it in a deep baritone. I have no idea.
Because Mark is a master of voices. I thought I explained that a while ago on this episode.
Were you not paying attention, Casey?
Come on, Casey.
It's like have you read my autobiography?
Not yet. All right, let's move on here. Alessandro Passeri. Sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. What was your diet like leading into or during V to get you so shredded?
Well, it was an athlete's diet. It was high protein and lots of greens, and trying to keep away from dairy. Just basically that. And I toyed sometimes with food combining. Food combining is where you don't eat meat and starches together. You can eat greens and starches together. You can eat meat and greens together, but you can't eat meat and starch together. And so you have to leave some space of time. If you're going to have starch in your diet at all, you have to wait and let your food digest, and then have starch as a standalone dish. So I mean, other than playing around sometimes with that kind of stuff, it was just basically a good athletic diet, a balanced meal.
Sure.
Because after all, and the rest of it was just exercise all day long.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've stayed in great shape. Even now, you're still in. Come on, man. I know.
He's in better shape than both of us.
He definitely is.
Yeah.
Oh, guys.
All right, Mark. One last fan question here. Stevie
right.
McQueen, he would kill me if I didn't ask you this.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any chance that you're going to be making any appearances in the UK for any type of Comic-Cons or anything? The last time that you were in the UK was 2006.
Well, I love Great Britain. I love the United Kingdom. I'd love to go back. I haven't received an invitation. Maybe I got into one of my long explanations and they all fell asleep. I have no idea, but I would love to go back, and I would look forward to it.
All right. And I've heard rumors lately that there's a V, something with V coming up. Have you heard anything about this?
No.
No.
I mean, Ken Johnson, who I just got an email from yesterday, reminds me I've got to answer, is always working on the next iteration of V. And meanwhile, he's got a book out, title of which slips my mind at the moment, but it's about Sherlock Holmes in the 21st century.
Holmes Coming.
That's it. Say it again.
Holmes Coming.
Holmes Coming, exactly.
Yeah, and he's. I just got that same email. Probably the book's coming out, I think, pretty soon. We're trying to work on getting him on the show as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, great! This was when I ducked down when I was joking a moment ago. Got another dog hair in my mouth because you can't get enough of those.
Minkerton hair.
Minkerton.
All right, let's talk about this new movie that you're in that we're all waiting for the release of. That even Ray and I, the famous podcasters, can't get a screener of. Team of Two.
Oh. It's an extraordinary movie by Joss Gomez, who combines. He's a young filmmaker, young in the sense of his oeuvre, right? But he has devised a kind of a Fellini-esque approach to adventure filmmaking, in which outlandishness and comedic spoof hint at, I think, an amazing complexity in his future offerings. This guy's a pretty extraordinary filmmaker. it's Fellini-esque in the sense that it is no holds barred and make your own rules. So that's about as much as I can say about it without, tipping the scales one way or the other.
Sure. It's
Yeah.
another one of these like sort of parody movies, right? It's you can't take it serious.
Yes. In the same way that if you see Fellini's 8.5, it's a parody in its own way. So I don't want to. It's a funny thing, Gary's Place, the play that I sent you that you've read. If I say that Gary's Place deals with Alzheimer's, people develop a thought about it. They go, "Oh, yeah, I know what that kind of play is like." No, you don't. It's just so I'm resisting trying to put a label on what Joss Gomez's film is like.
Sure. Well, we look forward to seeing it. We're going to have Joss on eventually once we see it and once we can talk about it.
Great.
We're looking forward to it. We're looking forward to anything that you're doing in the future, Gary's Place being one of them. Is there anything else that you want to say about Gary's Place?
About Gary's Place?
Mm-hmm.
You know what, that kind of question, of all the questions that I've been asked this evening, is probably the hardest to answer. I would just say, no, I don't have anything to say about it at all, except it should be read and it should be performed because I think it's an important part of American theater. That's it. And it's fun and funny and romantic.
Yeah,
and
I'll say
that's the tag. What?
I'll say this.
Okay.
Stay tuned for Gary's Place.
Okay.
All right.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been great seeing you guys. When you're out this way, stop by again. Ray, same to you.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Mark. Any plugs? Anything that you want to plug?
Just these. I've had these just put in. See if you can...
I was gonna say you look great, man. You look fantastic.
It does.
I know you don't have fucking plugs. Don't lie to me. All right. Thank you so much, Mark. Anything else to say, Ray?
No, this was a true pleasure.
Thank you. Same here.